Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We're back again with another culture topic. You follow me on Instagram, Jay Doran underscore the culture man. Hit follow. You're going to see content, conversations. God, I don't like that word content. That's another topic for another day. Or maybe today, episodes where I'm talking about business, uh, culture, leadership, management, etc., theory of business. And in those episodes on Jay Doran underscore the culture man on Instagram, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute clips, I'm elaborating with you in a longer form on each topic. So today's topic is do this for a culture of innovation. Do this for a culture of innovation. And why this is relevant is because the deeper we go into these ideas, maybe there's just one granule of truth you take away from this to better your business, better your life. So pay attention very carefully. Follow me on Instagram. So do this for a culture of innovation. First thing I wrote down was feedback loops, but I want to, and I'll explain feedback loops. Communication. It's funny. I was just rereading chapter 1 of the Beyond Order. So rule number 13 or rule number 1 in Beyond Order, written by um, Peterson. And the chapter do not uh do not I think I have it around here somewhere, but it was essentially do not carelessly denigrate social institutions and creative achievements. And in that chapter, Peterson was outlining what a hierarchy is, basing on the internal is, facts and values, or facts and value represents itself externally in social hierarchies. So the most competent naturally rise up in a social group because the group, it has to determine for survival who's most fit to get this done or that done. Now, of course, hierarchies can become corrupt and break down in their truth or competence, as Peterson would say. Cleaners cleaning. And let me pause this a second here. Fix that. Record. So recording in progress. So yes. So hierarchy naturally manifests itself as a consequence of facts, of competence in relationship to those facts, and the external representation of that individual pursuit in a group is a social hierarchy where the group agrees, even implicit, unspoken, this person is of a higher order based on what they know they don't know, what they've done, what they're doing, etc., etc. And now this is why I'm bringing this part of that rule number 1: do not carelessly denigrate social institutions and creative achievements. Is the it's by doing so, we actually undermine innovation. So if we're talking about feedback loops, the mentor mentee the mentor mentee dynamic between an authority and a subordinate is a fragile dynamic that uh, uh, takes values, the living out of values, like the living out of certain character traits or character attributes, a pattern of behavior, so that the authority and the person with more authority does not undermine the individual with less authority, or the individual with less authority doesn't increase the likelihood of creating undue shame on the authority. So an example actually in that chapter was how someone of a lower ranking in a group gives feedback to the authority in front of others that risks shaming them. Well, we've talked about in other topics that the degree of responsibility of the authority in a group, the leader in a group, the positional leader in a group, they're going to set the tone for how safe people feel to tell the truth. And they're going to do that with how well they take feedback. So do this for a culture of innovation. Be able to take feedback. So if we're talking about feedback loops, do the best you can to take and accept feedback of those in the group, of those lower in ranking in the group. Part of the value, because as you know, it's about information. the information flow. So if you see, imagine, yeah, a horizontal and vertical line. The vertical line is the hierarchy from those at the bottom of the hierarchy in position to the top of the hierarchy. Top, let's say it's the CEO. Bottom is the janitor. The janitor may see, feel, intuit something of great importance that the CEO, based on their position, is not going to see, feel, intuit. If the janitor is afraid or has some other reason not to share that very important information, it eventually doesn't get to the CEO. For example, maybe there's some kind of structural issue in the building where at some point all the plumbing is going to break all at the same time. You can only imagine 1,000 employees or 100 employees, 50 people in a building. The janitor, you know, for the last 6 months has tried to say something and just felt, undermined, and has lost faith in the organization, isn't active. Well, now, it's the most important business meeting of the year. His biggest potential prospect is somehow, or a current like biggest client is in the building, and it's on shaky ground because we might lose the client. And there's a big board meeting or a big executive meeting with the client, and the CEO's in the middle of the presentation, and the person then has to go to the bathroom. That's this big client, and they use the bathroom in the building, and all of a sudden, it explodes, and there's um, excrement all over their body. What are the likelihood that that person's going to do business? Maybe that's the last, you know, straw in the issues they've had with that company. Maybe they believe in signs and they take it as a sign to fire that company as a vendor because they're covered in excrement as a consequence of the plumber or the plumbing staff being either not listened to or not sharing information that would be important for the organization to take action on. It's a silly example, but you know, for have a culture of innovation, we have to have feedback loops, open feedback loops, because innovate. Let's go to the definition of innovate right here. Make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. The company's failure, here quote, the company's failure to diversify and innovate competitively. So make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. That's a verb. Introduce something new, especially a product. What is the correct definition? So here, to introduce something new, make changes, anything established. Think about the continued relevancy of a business. To reimagine, reimagine and continue to create value for customers, which ultimately creates value for shareholders, for employees, for everyone in the organization to rise up. If an organization is not providing value to the marketplace anymore, or nowhere near a degree at which it once did, that's going to have a negative effect on everybody in the organization. It's going to be, it doesn't matter how political the organization is, vying for power. It's not bringing enough value to the marketplace. And now it's worth less. And there's less upward mobility, less opportunity to succeed from an economic and social standpoint, less constructive conversation, constructive development. And that's going to affect the meaningful development of each individual's life as it relates to that company. Like they don't like their company, they don't like what they do anymore. They loved what they did, it's what they do. They love that, but they've lost love for it as a consequence of the company actually being in the way of that pursuit of meaning. And so feedback loops are important. And how we have, and that's where it goes to how those in positions of authority make it okay for people to speak their mind is going to have an impact on innovation, as well as vision, as well as strategic planning, as well as executing, which is going to come down to setting priorities and creating boundaries and the living within that contradiction of when to say no, when to say yes, which is great. which a competent executive is going to be able to do. Number two, I wrote, focus on ideas, not people. Do it with people, not against people. So, yeah, I mean, in times of conflict, where if we're competing, we want to cooperate with our teammates and compete in the marketplace. That's competition creates an accountability for organizations to have, in a sense, a self-awareness, an organizational awareness that they're less important than the customer's value. The customer's values, or the customer as a value. It's like Kant's treat, treat people as an end in themselves, not a means to an end. What help competition forces a company to stay true to the customer, because someone else can do it better. The customer is going to go with them. Someone else builds a relationship more effectively, in a more efficient way. The customer is going to go to them, and the company is forced to look at itself constantly and how it can do better and how it can improve. And there's the laws of accelerating change, overhauling complexity, and tremendous competition. Peter Drucker, in the spirit of that quote, uh, when we cooperate and collaborate internally as an organization, which the leadership sets the tone for that and how they behave and how they work, um, and why they work, and how clear that is to inspire. Inspire is just not happening through words; it's happening through actions and interactions, because it's in a spiritual. It's in spirit. It's a reflection of the values and action. So, the focusing on ideas, not people, is a consequence of a tuned in, aware management that's cooperating with the team to compete against the competition. We are competing. Yes, we're competing in some metaphorical sense against ourselves if we're continuing to learn and improve. And that's a responsibility conversation. But the accountability, the fact that there are competition that also want to win and also want to be the best and also have goals that drive them, ultimately makes it's like the sea rising makes all the ships rise. That makes each company better as they pursue value for creating for the customer. So the management that can focus on creating a culture of cooperation internally to compete externally, they're not going to be focused on the people in the organization, blaming and complaining and undermining them. They're going to be focused on the ideas that need to be worked out, the strategies that need to be worked out, and the um, inefficiencies that are always on some spectrum, uh, an, have a lasting impression. They're a constant in organizations. There's naturally going to be inefficiencies that have to get worked out and weeded out as a company is growing, shrinking, growing, shrinking, adapting, responding to the marketplace's ebbs and flows. I also have reinvest into the business. Be aware of the I versus the we. This is where it comes down to, depending on if it's private or public. A private company is going to have a greater onus of responsibility of the founding ownership, or the private shareholders, in the sense that, based on their personal values and their personal vision and their personal sacrifice, is going to affect how much a company can reinvest in itself and innovate, because it's going to take capital to innovate. Why? Because capital has a relationship with debt, has a relationship with talent. You've got to pay, and pay well, and have have opportunity to grow, and it takes capital to do so. If someone's just fattening their own personal balance sheet, they're going to have less capital to build the balance sheet of the organization. It really is that simple. Everyone has their own subjective goals, aims, desires, interpretation of reality as they own and navigate businesses. But all of that affects the degree by which a company can grow and succeed, and has a relationship with the employee's future as it relates to the company. So I wrote, reinvest into the business, do this for a culture of innovation, be aware of the I versus the we. If companies start as I, and they develop into we. I mean, I is, there's no one other than we, unless it's a we implicit in the individual to customer relationship, or the company to customer relationship. There's not yet any employees. It is the radical I, the radical self belief, the radical vision, the radical self delusion in some sense. The radical, as Nietzsche said, the visionary lies to himself, the liar to everyone else. The visionary is the radical I that's strong enough to get through the doubt and the contempt of starting a new idea, right? As Schopenhauer would say, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. But over time, that impulse to start something, to create something, to add value, is going to have to wane and evolve and mature as there becomes more people to actually help that I, that radical I, serve the marketplace. Now, there's employees, and you, for a constructive relationship, a culture of cooperation, the radical I is going to diminish the we, the people, if it can't hear them and can't tap into their I, their individuality. We don't want to suppress our people's ability to think. But if we do suppress their ability to speak, that'll suppress their ability to think, which will suppress their ability to act, which will suppress their ability to produce and add more economic value to the organization than if they were able to speak and think and act and interact and become stronger and better and higher performing leaders, people through their work of the organization. So the I spends on themselves, just a simple dichotomy here. The I spends on themselves, the we invests into the organization. It's like that we psychology. In the CEO manual, I try to do the best I can to articulate. I try to do the best I can to articulate the distinction between the founder, psychological disposition and philosophies and behaviorisms with the CEO, the chief executive officer. That journey from a founder to a chief, from a infant to a adult, from the beginning consciousness to a a new beginning conscious. And that's not an end. It's like Churchill's. This is the beginning of the end and the end of the beginning. It's, I don't know. I don't remember that quote well. So in closing, trust but verify. Be engaged. Yeah, I've talked about and we've experienced together a bunch on engagement and the importance of engagement. I think culturally in our business culture, there's tremendous influence on ownership not to be engaged. There's almost like there's a shame factor. I should feel shame for working. The found, you got to work on your business, not in it. It's both and it's contextual and it depends. You, we need leaders when things are going terribly. You better have a leader you're following that's working in their business when things are tough. When things are great, if the leader goes too far away from the business, it's like the sun going, Pluto going too far away as a moon now from the sun. There's no life. It's just cold and harsh. If it's too close, it's like Mars. It's too hot. But Earth is just right. Figuring out your Earth orbit as a founder, as an operator, as a leader, as an owner is vital for the continued evolution, innovation, and success of the organization. So being engaged, in closing, I would say for a culture of innovation, um, I think, the purpose of an organization is constantly reinvented through the engagement and education and awareness of the management, which has a relationship with who influences them, both alive, living, and dead, what they what they have been through in their life that either creates an insatiable fire that can't be put out or one that can easily go out without intervention. Everyone's different that starts a business. Anybody could start a business, but can you finish it? So I would say in closing, don't start something you can't finish. If you want a culture of innovation, tell the truth, listen, be present, be engaged, do the best you can to bring the best out of your people. But bringing the best out of your people may not be exactly what you think it is. It could just be getting things done, and the rest will take care of itself, right? Responsibility being modeled, seen, observed, felt, accountability being given in speech, taken in action. Am I engaged? And can my people tell me what they think And how are we building this thing together? And how do we react or relate to when those chains of communication, the open feedback loops become closed feedback loops? Success undermines itself. What was once a responsible value system in group cohesion becomes an entitled circumstance as we actually succeed. We need a new goal, a new vision, a new plan. You know, we we, we can't rest on our laurels. And as long as I'm going to be in business, I better finish it. So while you're there, be there. If you want to retire, retire. Don't half retire because you're going to destroy your culture. We'll see you next time, the Culture Matters podcast.